The year that I was born, 1911.
I was born in 1912.
1908.
1926 in Dunellen, Florida.
1922.
1923.
I was born in St. Louis. My mother delivered me in Barnes Hospital in the basement. And that was because everything was segregated when I was born in 1927.
One often wonders about people when you first meet them, what has happened during their life to make them the person that they are today. My entire life, especially my school and even my college years, was subjected to segregation. I remember passing 2 white schools to get to my colored school. Black children were taught by black teachers. White children were taught by white teachers. Everything was separate and everything was not equal. And it was accepted by our government, I'm so sorry to say, and that's a shameful part of our country's history. Segregation has continued throughout my life. It was not pleasant, it was hurtful, it was humiliating. I lived through it and I lived above it.
Bonk Johnson told me to. This old Jim Crow is dead bad luck for me and you. I've been traveling from show to show. Everywhere I have been, I find some old Jim Crow. Down in Louisiana, Tennessee, Georgia's a mighty good place to go and get together, break up this old Jim Crow. Break it up now.
1, 2, 3. Mic check, mic check, mic check.
Hello world. We're working on a project called Jim Crow to Barack Obama. We're collecting video histories from octogenarians or older citizens and people who are, college, high school age, and their perspective on race relations, but also election of President Obama.
Coming into this documentary, I was thinking that I would just be hearing, the same stories just about of different experiences that people had. And I thought I had heard it all before, but I just thought it'd be cool to kind of do it myself. But in conducting these interviews, you really see just how much it affected different people and how it affected them in the long run.
Because we were collecting video histories, we, the youth, asked all the elders the same questions. The answers give perspectives from the 1900s all the way up until today.
Hi, Mrs. Logan. My name is Jocelyn Smith, and I'm so glad that you sat down to talk with us today. Just to say a few words about myself, I'm 17 years old. I'm in high school. I'm about to be a senior. So would you please state your full name?
My full name is Ora Elizabeth Logan.
Would you guys both please state your name? Would you start, Grandma?
I'm Clarice Davis Durham.
And I'm Charles Alexander Davis, Sr.
Now this is one of our questions.
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
I lived Jim Crow. It was all a part of our lives. There was nothing we could do but abide by the law.
The term Jim Crow originated with a white minstrel actor in blackface who portrayed a black character full of derogatory black stereotypes.
Jim Crow I define as a system that systematically segregates blacks, purely on the basis of color.
Jim Crow is the set of laws after post-Reconstruction, probably to the 1960s, in terms of laws from Plessy versus Ferguson to Brown versus Board of Education.
How did Jim Crow affect you?
Women of color could not try on clothing in department stores.
Wow, I didn't know that.
When I think of Jim Crow, I think of buses that when we had to sit in the back, they had a dividing line.
Everything was sort of hush-hush or undercover, but yet right open, everybody knew it was segregation no matter what happened.
In your childhood, were you ever, by your family, told any, guidelines of what to do and what not to do?
My mother would say, well, you can't do this, because colored people can't go to that place or cannot do this. So you knew, it was told to you.
You just knew. After it happened a couple of times, they would tell you, don't come in this or that. You don't use that door, boy. Everybody was a boy. And there were signs, white only, no niggers allowed. So those things were pretty clear, very clear.
What was your response to that? How did that make you feel?
You were scared. You didn't go in there because you knew that meant big trouble.
I can remember realizing that there were consequences to what you do if you violated the segregation laws. Our oldest brother was quite daring, and some reason he and a white boy who lived in the neighborhood got into a fight. And my mother was so upset, calling him home, just stop it, don't go any further with it. And I realize now that she was thinking about what would happen. A mob could come and take my brother away because of this fight.
And how old were you when that happened?
I must have been about 10.
Mm-hmm. And he would have been about 13.
Yes.
But there were some blacks that ignored that and they got locked up. And when you got locked up in jail, that was bad because you were usually abused. And so you obeyed those signs or suffered the consequences.
When I was growing up, I don't even know if we used the word Jim Crow too much. We used segregation. I mean, that was the hardcore word. Segregation, segregation, segregation. And I guess when they wrote it up in the paper, the high-sounding word was Jim Crow.
In 1959, I moved to Memphis. All of Memphis was segregated. Schools, churches, theaters, parks, zoo, you name it. It was all segregated. You could go one day a week, maybe if the weather wasn't too bad.
Segregation was pervasive throughout the entire century, but it was more intense in the earlier years. So the story of the 20th century might be said to be a gradual modification of racism and the institutions which grew out of it. In 1999, I could go places and do things that I could not have done in 1909. Either law or custom would have prevented both.
We asked the question, how old were you when you first realized that there were black people and white people?
I've always noticed that I was different, that I was darker than a lot of my friends. But it wasn't actually until I saw an Asian student be ridiculed for being Asian and stereotyped that it really made me start to think about who I was. And being from the South, it started very early on because the town that I'm from, it was actually physically segregated by a railroad track. I learned very early, our family will never be able to live on that other side of the track. And we had our own places, and these were the Black-owned businesses. This is the Black side of town.
Were there any times that you were discriminated against?
A lot of times. I recall, though, as a young guy, this really got me. I'm like 9, 10 years old. And Branch Rickey, who was Cardinal general manager at the time, had established what he called a knothole gang. Now, the knothole gang was integrated. The Sportsman's Park was not integrated, except for the knothole gang. So if you were a boy and had a knothole ticket, which you could only get from the YMCA, you could go and sit in the knothole gang section, which was in the grandstand where no other blacks could sit. Blacks had to sit in the bleachers or the pavilion, but boys could sit there. All right. Babe Ruth, who was a famous ball player at the time, was coming to play. He played with the New York Yankees. And I got on the streetcar. I met a little white boy about my same age who was coming up from the South St. Louis. And we two little boys, and so we got sitting together, and being frightened, all these adults all around us, so we got together. And we went out to the ball game. Now, the two of us went over to the side where the grandstand is, and we were going to go in. Now, when we got there, the guy said, no, no, no. What he meant was no for me and yes for him. And so we ran, and he said, go around to the other side. We ran around to the other side. We got around there. The guy looked, he said, no, no, no. He meant no for him and yes for me. But we didn't understand it. So we run back around to the other side now, to the grandstand side, the two of us. This time, he looks, he says, he grabs the white boy and pulls him in. You go around to the other side. So I went around to the other side. That was the only time I went to the Browns game at one time. But, when you're a young kid, there are a lot of things you don't see the depth of it,
I remember one year, and I don't recall exactly the year, but I went to Mississippi with my mother's cousin, we called him Uncle Charlie. And Uncle Charlie schooled me before we left and told me, he said, now when you see a white lady coming down the street, now you have to get off the sidewalk, step over there and let her pass. And I love shoes, I still love shoes. And I had a little pair of black patent leather shoes. And so I did see the lady coming down the street. And he said, go on, get over, get over. And when I got over, I stepped in the mud. And I got my little shoes all mudded up, and I cried on that. And then he told me how to go into the store. Now, when you go into the grocery store, you don't say yeah, said no, you say yes, ma'am, and you said no, ma'am. I said, okay. So those were some of the things that happened when I was a little girl, and that was in Mississippi.
Yes, I have experienced racism. I believe the first time I was in 4th grade, and you know how at recess they have 4 square and you bounce the ball back and forth. So we had, for some reason, there was like a population of like Russian immigrants basically. So this one Russian girl in her broken English told me I was too black to play 4 square like with them. Why would anyone say that? I mean, I always knew there were different races and people were different. I knew I was black and other people were just different. And I think my world was more like rainbows and sunshine back then. And that was the one moment where I guess ignorance and innocence lost.
We had a white family that was a neighbor, but they was quite a ways that we would play with when we were small. But after they reached certain age, they would stop playing with us. So one day, my brother and some other kids, we was walking to school. We had to walk to school. And we saw this guy that we used to play with. His name was June Swin. And we were so glad to see him. I said, hey, June, hey, June. And my brother said, hey, June, hey, June. June was in a wagon, and he said, whoa. And he jumped out the wagon and grabbed my brother by the head and mowed his head and said, the next time you see me, I'm Mr. June. So those were some of the things that we experienced. And me, my brother and I, we cried all the way to school. And that kind of stuck with me, too, you know, that after they get a certain age, the law changed. Everything changed. We wasn't pre-warned because I really thought they was our friend because we had played together. And, you know, when they were small, my mother used to make biscuits and do peaches, and they would come down and even eat at our house. Either their parents would tell them that you can't play with them anymore, or especially with my brother being older than I was, and they had daughters.
My nationality is American. However, my parents are of Ethiopian descent. I'm Black. When I was a kid, like, I wasn't considered Black. I was considered Black by some people and not considered Black by others. I was really confused for a long time. Like being even in high school, actually, and filling out the whatever, multiple choice. It was really painful for me. I'm laughing about it now, but I actually suffered a lot of pain because of stuff like this. One girl in the row of seats ahead of me decided to look at the whatever I filled out for my race, and she was like, "You are not Black," or whatever, and I was just like, like in front of the whole class, you know, why did you put that? You know, you need to put other, you know, and I was just like, I hate you. I hated her. And then another time, actually, a teacher did this to me, but she just like made it a point to like talk about whatever I would fill in that box. So maybe it was more confusing for other people.
My religion was Catholicism, and there was a Catholic church for Black people that was called St. Elizabeth, and that's the church I went to. However, if it was cold weather, bad weather, or something like that, then we went to the church that was on Sarah and Kennerly. And that was a white Catholic church called St. Matthew's. Guess what? Of all of the Catholics in that neighborhood, they let us have only 3 seats at Mass. And they were 3 seats in the back on the north side of the church. When I went into the confessional and I said, why do I always have to sit in the back of the church? And the only thing I know about the front of the church is when I go to take communion. He said, that's where you belong, in the back of the church. I told my father about it, and my father being very, I guess you could call him passive. He was a very gentle person, and he said, Lois, I won't have you go to the back of St. Matthew's Church anymore. So I didn't say any more about that in confession, but that let me know that there was something wrong about white people and Black people and their relationship to each other.
As soon as the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, I wanted to fly. I always wanted to fly. I had a penchant for airplanes. Went into the Army Air Corps office for recruits and told them I wanted to sign up to join the Army Air Corps. And I was given the word that, get out of here, boy. We don't have no niggas flying airplanes.
Wow. And that must have hit you pretty hard, right?
Not
Not really, because it was just the norm.
You're so used to being in the South, to hearing it, it just, because if you let it affect you, you'd be ill.
Yeah. Did it ever make you want to try harder? What did it work as a motivation to kind of say, this is what I can
Every
do?
single day of my life. Well, you're never allowed to forget it. If you hit the streets, if you get ready to get on public transportation, if you go to school, you know, you're in segregated schools, and so consequently it's there. It never goes away. Here's the thing, if you're going to survive, you have to build in a toughness where these kind of things are secondary and you're about the business of survival. And in so doing, you have to do what is expedient or necessary to stay alive and survive.
In schools, people learn so much about civil rights. It goes from slavery to civil rights, and then that in between, it's kind of blank. It's like for that period that Black people just disappeared virtually. But I think we're kind of filling in that in between, in that like 1865 to like 1955 period. It's kind of being filled in.
Question: how do you define racism?
That's a snake with many heads. Racism is still alive and well in America.
It's a form of ignorance.
I think racism always needs to be talked about, long as it exists. I feel like our generation, like Generation Y or Generation New Millennium, they don't know what to call it. Some of us later born after like 1994 or 5. But we have to talk about it until something's fixed.
I define racism as unjust treatment of blacks by whites, primarily white men in positions of power.
You know, there's some people who say things who it's all subconscious, and then some people who it's conscious, but then you can't ever, like, nobody wants to own that. I feel like in our culture, being racist has like been painted as like the worst thing possible. It's like, if you are a racist, then you're a murderer, you're just like Hitler, you're just like a person who owns slaves, like you're brutal, you know. And so everybody's like, I'm not a racist, I'm not a racist, I'm not a racist, instead of like actually looking at the reality.
Yeah, it's a philosophy of, I suppose hatred is the best word, but a belief that black people were inferior, that black people were the other, and the practices that grew out of that philosophy.
Black people have been accused of being racist, but I always felt that racism came from people who were in power and who had power to enforce certain laws and practices. And recently we have started talking about white supremacy rather than racism to make that distinction.
I do think that everybody has their own idea of what not only race is, whether it's a real thing or not, or whether culture is more important. And everybody has their own idea of what they think specifically black is and what they don't think it is, or what they think it means to be white or Asian or whatever. So I think that like it is really complicated. I hope that whatever the collective idea of race is changes. I don't know what that would look like.
In this documentary, there may be some things you're not going to like, such as using the N-word or using different names that black people have been called. So, beware.
Coons.
Coon.
Coon.
Coon, nigger, boy.
Aunt Jemima.
Porch monkey.
Darky.
Blackie. Years ago, we didn't care to be called black, and that was a derogatory name. But here of late, we accept black as thanks to Malcolm X.
Sambo.
Zigaboo.
Big lips.
Baby coon.
Jigaboo. Pickaninny.
Pickaninny.
Nigger. Nigga.
The N-word, I don't really want to say it.
We were on niggas. Tar baby. African booty scratcher.
Even the black men were never called mister. Didn't expect you to call him mister.
the actions always were demeaning.
The term ghetto, I think it's becoming one of those words that's starting to relate to more about Black people than the conditions.
I remember in Omaha, when I first started the kindergarten, I didn't know, what the difference is. I had some white little boys who were my friends, at home, and I had black guys who were my friends at home. And so one day, as I was walking to school, a little white boy called me nigger, So I went home and, Mama, what is a nigger?
A nappy head.
Rabbits. Oh, we have been calling them possums.
Gorilla. Monkey.
And that's oddly enough, and it makes people mad, but it's a word that I use all the time.
Give me an example.
I'd say here, my God, this place is full of niggers. That's it.
There was a verse that we heard as children.
Nigger, nigger, black as tar, wished he was a white man, ha, ha, ha.
4th, 5th grade, the first time I ever got in trouble was for fighting some kids who lived in a trailer park in our town. This was Bull, Mississippi, which is right outside of Cleveland. And my little cousin and I, we were in the fight because he called her the N-word, and she was so offended. If someone picks on your family, you're gonna fight too. And I wasn't a bad kid, but I did fight.
Now that I'm learning about slavery in English and history, I'm really seeing why we shouldn't use the N-word. These words kind of came during the time, especially during the slave codes. When they started to use African Americans after Bacon's Rebellion as actual, not just people or indentured servants, I think after they started to use them as more of as property, when people started to call African Americans like three-fifths of a person, and when they start to use words like the N-word and other words that they use to refer to us, I see those words as more of a really, really degrading word, as not even human. And I think for people to go around today and to say, yo, what's up, my N-word, I think it's just really ignorant because you're not knowing of the history and the culture of where this word came from. You're desensitizing a word that really referred to an African American as less of a human. Just seeing that every day, and the little 4th graders who I teach, seeing that was just really disgusting to me.
One incident, I was on the railroad track, and this little white girl was on the railroad track. And she said to me, I know who you are. You just an old poor black nigger. I said, you just an old poor peckerwood. So she got so angry with me, she picked up a brick and threw it and hit me on my leg. So I ran and I grabbed her. I threw her down on the railroad track, and I was really giving it to her. When I got home, I was crying, and my grandmother wanted to know why was I crying. And I told her what had happened. And she told me, she said, you cannot fight the white people here. And I wanted to know, why couldn't I fight? If she hit me, I was supposed to hit her back. And she said, no, you can't do that. We'll have to move away from here. And this is our home. We can't go nowhere. So you can't fight white people. You just let them say what they want to say and just ignore them. That was hard for me to take. I didn't understand why I could be abused and I couldn't retaliate.
And how old were you?
11 or 12 years old when that happened. It was hard. even after I got to be grown, it was hard. You got to be strong enough to stand up and take it. And I guess that's what I've been all my life. Call me names, whatever. I could take it.
We asked men, what was it like to be in the military service?
I enlisted in the Army Air Corps in 1945. When I was in the Air Force, it was fully segregated. There were no other level of work that a black in the Navy could get other than a cook.
Racism is a deadly poison. We were fighting two wars. one against racism in America and a war against an enemy overseas.
Montford Point Marine Corps, during the time we were the first black Americans that was in the United States Marine Corps, starting in 1942. When we were on the troop train, we went to Atlanta, Georgia, and they said some Marines would come and fix the food in the train station. When they got there and looked up and saw us, hey, what's going on? So you can't eat in here. And we had to get back on the train. Now, we were going overseas. Some of the guys didn't come back. So you could imagine how you would feel going overseas, going to die for these people. North Carolina was a very segregated state. We wasn't even permitted to mix with the white Marines. We were in a camp all by ourselves where there was nothing but just black recruits. We were really rejected, the people in the town of North Carolina. When we went into town, sometimes they closed the shop up to keep us from going into the shop shopping. And we was restricted to a certain area. We couldn't maybe go across the track. We wasn't allowed to eat in no restaurant. They had a small place for you in the bus station. You had to wait until everyone else got on the bus, and if there was any room on the bus for you, then you could get on. Even coming into camp, sometimes they wouldn't even let us get on the bus to come into camp. We was all non-commissioned officers, no black in as far as commission, no lieutenants, nothing. But as high as we could rank that we could go was a sergeant major, and all non-commissioned officers. What made us strong was they was telling us that we couldn't do it, we couldn't be Marines. So what we was going to do, we was going to show them that we could be Marines. And so they were putting a lot of training on us, but you know what? It made us stronger. We were better trained. We could do anything better. We set records that still stand down there in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. They was trying to get us to fail, but we wouldn't. We didn't have that in our minds. We thought after we got black drill instructors, we'd have it good. Just the opposite. We had it rougher because they wanted to prepare us for any situation we come up with, and they wanted us to succeed. And by the way, Camp Johnson now is the only camp in the Marine Corps that's named after a black in the Marine Corps. Is the only one, Camp Johnson.
How did we feel? Well, I'll tell you, it's not a fun thing. Because when you get into a training camp and someone says to you, you niggers want to become Marines, we'll show you you're not qualified to be it, and we're going to turn you back. You're going to wish today you'd never come. And guess what? That hardened our resolve, and we broke every standing record that was on the books in the Marine Corps in Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, President Roosevelt sent his cabinet down, 3 members, to see who these super ends were. They couldn't believe at what were the things that we've done. To give you an example, the war was on, and we had artillery training to do. They went to New York City, got 4 old guns that you see parked around different places, and brought them down to North Carolina. These guns were so old from World War I till they had rubber tires that were stuck to the metal. And they brought them down. They hadn't been fired since World War I. We took those guns, cleaned them, and fired them, and broke records with those guns.
How come I never saw any black guys in a John Wayne movie?
Well, to be truthful with you, we were actually there to work. Well, we did all of the jobs like hauling ammunition up to the front, loading ammunition on the boats, unloading the boats.
You got to realize that it wasn't the island that was segregated, it was the people on the island. So wherever the Americans went, the American carried segregation with them. So that was the problem.
The Germans wondered why black people would go to war and fight for a country that denied them the privileges and things they were fighting for other people. I understand that when they came back from overseas and were walking out off the plank off the boat, black people were told to go one way and white people told to go the other way. for having fought and risked losing their lives. They came back to a country that was still very much engrossed in segregation and discrimination. And this was in 1945.
We had been overseas over 2.5 years. Now, how would you feel? You would feel awful bad, and it takes a lot of praying to get over stuff like that. Believe me when I tell you.
And so why do you think then that black people did fight?
I know in my case, I would take advantage of every opportunity I was given to better myself. The dynamics of racial segregation, white supremacy, and so forth, I thought would be with us all our lives. I never thought it would be coming to an end because I had no reason to believe that it was getting any better. I just knew that in some cases, you have to do the best you can with what you got.
The Army was not integrated until I got out of the service. President Truman integrated it. Oh, I thought it was a great thing, but I do remember the great deal of discussion going on about that it wasn't going to work.
I wonder how much courage it took for you not to explode or flip out during times like that.
I had another experience coming from the game once, several of us, and at that time, Seamus Avenue, coming down from Grand, was white. Blacks would begin after you got past Van der Venne. So this little boy, who was quite young, probably 8 years old, he was standing out there in front of his house, you know, and we passed back, niggas, 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 you know. So I hit him hard in his chin and ran on down the street. That was the only time I ever took any action.
I don't care anything about who calls me a nigger. There was a ad in the paper or something in South St. Louis about a sale. So these kids were sitting on the stoop next door to the place. And I guess they'd been 7 or 8 years old or something like this. And the girl said to me when we got out of the car, she said, "Are you a nigger?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "Wait, my sister's coming. Now you'll know 2 niggers." They all jumped up and ran.
In my hometown in Louisiana, in New Orleans, public transportation had a thing called a screen, and it said for colored patrons only. Now, you could get on public transportation, and as long as you sat behind this thing, you pushed it up, you could sit, and you could move it all the way up to the front. But you'd be filling up still behind the screen. They were made out of wood. What I used to do was, we had fireplaces at home in our house, so I would stand at the bus stop, and as the bus would go by, I'd lift them off and stack them up, take them home, and they made great firewood. I've been a rebel my entire life.
Yes, in stores, they would wait on us. But if a white person would come in to the store, they would tell us we would have to wait, and they would go wait on them. They had the privilege of getting ahead of us, regardless to how long we had been in the store.
How did that make you feel?
I didn't know any better. Really, I was small. I thought it was just something that had to be done, or it was supposed to be done like that. And until I grew up in high school, well, I would go to the store. If they didn't wait on me, I'd just go out, I'd walk out. I didn't have to have those things that I wanted. If they had to do me like that, and I have walked out of a mini store because of that.
I remember when I was a boy, a man who drove the bakery truck that delivered bread to the stores hit a black girl. And the word got out in the community that this man had hit this black girl. And when the truck came to the stores following that, the boys in the neighborhood just got together and stood in front of the stores and told the driver, you keep on going, we're not buying any more bread. Now that was a small protest, but it was effective, and it didn't make national news. It might have made the local news, but it didn't make national news and all. So we've had protests where we saw injustice in the land.
I can remember now, I think I had just finished college then, but I was elected to be on the Board of Governors for the YWCA. That is the colored branch. They had two branches. There was the big YWCA that was downtown that had a swimming pool and all the necessary equipment, while the colored Y was just a big house. So this year, the Board of Management had to have delegates to go to the conference that was being held in Atlantic City. So I was elected to go to the conference. So I went along with another woman. But the first morning when we were there, we thought we would go downstairs and have breakfast. So we sat there, and the waitress just passed all around us and everything. So finally she came up and said, we don't serve colored here. So of course we said, well, I guess we'll just leave then. We'll find some place that would serve colored. My friend and I, we picked up our coats and we're getting ready to leave. And now the table next to us, there was 3 or 4 white people. So the white woman stopped us and said, did I hear her say that she wouldn't serve you? So we said, yes, that's what she said. She said, well, we're not staying either. She said, and I'm going to bring this before the body when I get back to the conference. And so we got up and left, and the people at that table also got up and left. And sure enough, when we had the conference that day, when new business was called for, she stood up and told about the incident. And she felt that a letter should be written to them and that no one in that conference should go to that restaurant, should boycott them. But I remember that as being outstanding.
So growing up in Chicago, there was never a place that you could go anywhere in the city. Basically.
Yeah, if we heard of a place in Chicago that didn't serve blacks or something, we would rush into it and overflow it, and they'd leave us alone. We didn't shut anybody down. We just didn't accept that we couldn't eat there.
While conducting these interviews, you really get a chance to see the smallest events because you hear about all these different, big events, the bus boycotts and things of the sort. These are big events, but you don't hear about the smaller things from these people's perspectives, and it really does change their whole entire outlook on life.
Even though we had those experiences, we knew that there was a better way, and that if we did our part, that better day would come.
And that brings us to the point of, things that we would do to bring change about. We were active in the NAACP. We were active in protest, particularly connected with the Scottsboro Boys. And I don't know if you know about the Scottsboro Boys, but they were hitchhiking on a train with some white girls. And when they were discovered, the girls charged that they had been raped by the boys. And of course, they were arrested and given life imprisonment. I don't know if they were given the death penalty, but anyhow, there was quite a campaign to free them. And we joined that campaign by demonstrating, marching, carrying flyers, distributing flyers. Well, people were really upset that this had happened. It was like the opposition to lynchings that were taking place in the South. This was just another instance of the unfairness and the dangers, that black men lived with. people felt like they had to do something, whether or not they were successful in it, just the activity, I think, was required. And we became a part of that movement.
It was a national protest movement. The Scottsboro Boys were symbols, I think, of racial oppression.
The importance of feeling in this Jim Crow era, a lot of people don't know the story complete.
And what does it do to you psychologically to know this part of history? Did you know you were missing that part before?
No one ever knows what they're missing out on. Because if you knew you were missing out, then you would probably, do something about it. Yeah, there were obviously inequalities, but there was no knowledge on the gravity of the actual situation. He didn't know that lynchings were happening left and right, and that they had postcards with lynchings on them, and it was just so almost normal, and that's the sick thing about it. So I think that's kind of what I've learned about lately.
And the word picnic comes from a white expression. On Sunday, they'd come out of church and say, let's have a picnic. We're gonna pick a nigger to lynch. And they made a big party of it. So I never talk about having a picnic, because I know the derivation of it. Picnic means pick a nigger, string him up.
So these postcards are picnics, but you would call them lynchings now.
I mean, you can believe this happened, but then at the same time you can't. I mean, where it's the, humanity there. How can you enjoy a meal and sit outside like a fun event and watch someone die, and then have pictures taken and send the postcard to your friends to be like, oh, look what we did this weekend, have a fun time, wish you were there. It's just kind of sick and bizarre.
Did you hear about any lynching when you were younger?
You heard of them, but there was no writing. The things that are true, we don't have a history. We absolutely do not have a history of our lives before it became popular.
Periodically, you would hear, and we had black newspapers, like Pittsburgh Courier and other papers around the country that reported on these lynchings.
Well, it depends on which press you look at. If it was the Argus or the American, it was very much lamenting the fact that we were still in the Dark Ages, from their point of view. If it was the Globe Democrat, it might be a little less. They still weren't for it, but it wasn't quite as brutal. The Argus and the American being black newspapers, and the Globe Democrat being white.
I heard of a lot of lynching. I had brothers, they were nice-looking guys, and they knew if one of the Caucasian women looked at them, they would be lynched. They knew that. And the boys would send out and get them, and they'd take them to the trees and hang them, lynch them. So it was a sad situation.
You were not allowed to touch. If a white woman was making change in the store, she would never hand that change to you. And if she did, you wouldn't accept it. Put it down on the counter and you wouldn't pick it up. And that was the Moor race. You see, you grew up, you call whites Mister. You don't just call them by their name. Well, that's a lynching offense.
Now, I was in service with a fellow named Alexander. Alexander was from Florida. He was made as a 10-year-old boy, held there while they lynched his grandfather and made him watch it. Now, Alexander was like old dynamite. If he was around white folks, they couldn't say nothing to him, because if they did, he'd explode like dynamite.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was bitter. He was plenty bitter, and justifiably so.
Just imagining that happening to someone that I knew, I don't know what I'd do. People experiencing, seeing people that they know, that they grew up with, that birthed them in some situations, be lynched and being hurt and killed, and having no sense of justice or representation for them from the government. For me, that is just, it's a heartbreaking experience, and it's difficult to see someone struggle with this for their entire life. That's something that scarred them, that really, really affected them.
And you know, we didn't have any anti-lynching laws at the time I grew up. I think Eleanor Roosevelt, whose husband was President Roosevelt, tried to work to get anti-lynching laws.
The last lynching here, I remember Missouri, was down here in Sykeston in the early 40s.
I knew of a lynching that happened here in Saxton, Missouri.
Can you tell me about that?
There was a black man, and he was going with this white school teacher, and they found out about him going with this white woman. They killed him, they lynched him, they tarred and feathered him, and drove him through the streets of Saxton. And today, when they say Saxton, it just kind of does something to me. Because I always go reflect back to that lynching that they did for that man. It was in the newspaper. Showed the pictures of the man lying in the street, tarred and feathered, and the dogs were around him. Young fella, it was a young man,
Did you hear of Emmett Till?
Have I ever? Have I ever? Have I ever? It's almost impossible to believe that at a time in his life could be killed because he was black and spoke to a white person.
Just like when Emmett whistled at this woman down there in Mississippi. He didn't take nothing but a whistle. Look what he did to her. I mean, just a whistle. My Lord. I mean, you whistle at a woman and get lynched.
And when he was found, his body was found and brought to Chicago, his body was displayed in an open casket.
His mother would not have him changed. She had an open casket and let the people look at him like he had been tortured.
And I know that I went to see the body, stood in a long line, and was just horrified at what I saw and angered.
Yes, he was over at Robert's Temple on State Street. And I was in Wisconsin at the time of the wake and funeral, but I thought that my son Charles ought to begin to know about the extremes of racist practice, racism, and I took him. We came down from Wisconsin.
What was the mood of the people standing in line?
I guess you would call it quiet anger. And you got the sense of outrage that had to be corrected.
The thing that grosses me out about the Emmett Till situation is the fact that the people who did this deed got away with it.
Yeah.
I think Mrs. Till did campaign for justice come about. She wanted to see the perpetrators punished for what they did. And yes, she did become an activist.
That's knowledge that this day and time, it should be part of a lesson in school. But that's history that I have lived through.
So when you read about stuff like that, it made you angry. I mean, it frightened you, it made you mad, made you angry. And, you know, it really wanted to make you do something about it. Yeah.
That's history. And there are some forms of that now.
What do you think happened in America to change the mores of the country?
I think the movements that developed out of the Emmett Till case and out of the Rosa Parks case in Montgomery mobilized people.
And we had to make the decision that we were not going to live like that anymore, that we had a right to go where we wanted to go. We had the freedom to go where we wanted to go. And that's how we started taking individual groups. We'd do the movies, we'd do the theaters, we'd do the publishing companies, we'd do the bottling companies. I mean, we just went A, B, C, D until everything now is integrated.
Do you ever participate in any civil rights activities?
Went to all kind of rallies and meetings and school meetings and political meetings where you get to use your head to think, you listen and learn.
I just admire those people for having the grit, taking all of that punishment. The way they treated them, kicking them, water, the hose, the dogs, the policemen.
How old were you when that was going on?
Must have been in my 50s. I couldn't have taken it. I admired the people. I would have been afraid. I could not have taken it. The students at the lunch counter, they had some of that in Houston, Texas Southern College. And the young men would go sit on the counters, and they'd sit there all day, and nobody served them, and nobody said a word, and they'd sit there. So some of the citizens would prepare food and take it there for them to eat.
I just wondered how intelligent Christian people could have been so hateful to other people who are human beings just like they. Although they didn't respect us as human beings just like they, I thought it was terrible.
Students in Greensboro sitting on those stools and letting people put hot coffee on them and put the cigarettes on the neck. And they didn't move. They just sat there. I said, wow, this is something. This is something. And so I said, I want to be a part of this. And that's when I got involved in the movement.
And I'm glad my brother Robert lived in New York and didn't live where he could be a part of it, because he'd be a dead man.
Why?
He was bitter. He was bitter about whites because of the way he was treated. And after he came out of college and couldn't get a job, and you chauffeuring and mowing the yard, and the best job he could get in Dallas when he was drafted was running an elevator in a tall insurance building. He detested it. He was bitter.
When I decided to come south, my brothers teased. They said, don't you know that Chicago is the promised land? Why are you going back to Egypt, Memphis? I made the decision that I wanted to be in the civil rights movement. So I packed up my wife and 3 children, and we moved to Memphis. And I've been here ever since. So I came and got busy with the NAACP. My oldest daughter was 5 years old, and she was one of 13 children to integrate the schools in Memphis. They had never been integrated. We didn't want to make the mistake that Little Rock made. Little Rock tried to do high schools. We didn't try to do high schools because we knew the high schoolers were already tainted. They were mean and boisterous and all that. So we started with first grade. First graders are going to be first graders. That's what they're going to do, whatever first graders do. So we didn't have any difficulty at that level. The difficulty we had was with the police who were there to protect us. The morning of integration, I was home and the police came to escort us to school because they didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't anticipate any difficulty, and there really wasn't any except for the police. Police completely surrounded the school, and as my daughter and I walked up the sidewalk, just going into the school, the police said the nastiest things to me and my daughter, 5 years old. I mean, they were things I couldn't repeat in any company. That's what they did. Why don't you take the so-and-so home? So-and-so, so-and-so. And they're just spewing all this hatred. 50 years since she walked through that not so humbling situation where people act like they are from another planet.
You might have heard of a big demonstration, say in Selma, Jackson, Mississippi. But there were Selmas and Jackson, Mississippis all over the South. I mean, you know, you didn't get, they were not written up as much as the Selmas or Birminghams and those, Atlanta and all. But we were doing that all over the South almost every day. Almost every day there was a demonstration going on when the movement started.
We did lots of voter registration here in the city of St. Louis. And we worked with Jesse Jackson. We was fighting for jobs. My daughter says she remembered it well. We picked the athletic club. And she remembered we were saying Jim Crow got to go. And then we went to a little town in Illinois and had a rally. And that was the only, and I carried my kids with me. That was the only time I was really afraid. And we were surrounded with the policemen with their guns. And I was just saying, Lord, if I get away, I will not be back. And I looked at my little kids and all, but we was able to get back on the bus and get back to St. Louis safe.
What do you think is the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
We did get legislation that's favorable to Black people, to all people, in fact. And that's the interesting thing about it. I think Black people have been in the forefront of a lot of progressive things that have happened in this country. For instance, women have, gained more status as a result of this movement.
He belongs to the ages, along with other symbolic figures. And he represents a focal point of change. And all that others were doing at that time and before now is symbolized by MLK.
I was in the Chicago Police Department. I became a member of a unit called the Human Relations Section. And every time Dr. King came to town to do any of the marches, we were right there with him.
And so that's how I met Dr. King. And I got to know him so well, we were on a first name basis.
Wow.
Now, I can remember one day These guys are throwing rocks, bottles, bricks, everything at the car. They're breaking the glass in the car and doing all these things. And I said, Doc, don't you a little bit upset? He said, no. Just like that, ice water in his veins. Here I am facing a crowd that I have seen so many times in my lifetime till I'm really hostile. But you can't show it because you're in law enforcement and you're supposed to be handing out the law.
I've always been curious how the network of preachers worked and how you guys got the word out to one another.
Yes, I was a part of a group of ministers that called him, and that's how we did it. If it was in Montgomery and we're going to have a big rally in Montgomery, then the call would go out. Martin had designated preachers in every major city in the South. And that was, we couldn't zap it out with an email, but we would get the word out and they'd call and you call and you get back. The sanitation strike brought him to Memphis. And what was so unusual, what these guys did, I mean, it was phenomenal. They're the lowest persons on the economic ladder. They're the lowest persons on the educational ladder. And yet they stood up to the man. And Martin said, oh yeah, we got to go help them. He never considered not coming to Memphis. And never occurred to him that it was too dangerous. There were so many death threats against his life. He just said, don't tell me about them anymore. He said, we've got to go to Memphis. The staff said, we're behind. We need to get going so we can get to the Poor People's Campaign. That's the only bit of hesitancy that he was going through. An order went out. I can't tell you who did it, who gave the order. But Martin Luther King is not to reach Washington under any condition. And we'll pay as much as $50,000.
The question is, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? That's the question.
Leading up to the night Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated here. And that night he spoke at Mason Temple. And the next day it was over.
I had the privilege of spending the last hour of his life on earth. I stood on the balcony. He stood here and I stood here. When I turned to go down the steps, Abernathy was still in the room. I got about 5 steps and the shot rang out. Ka-pow! I looked back. He had been knocked from the railing back onto the floor. And there was blood gushing from his wound in his face. I ran in the room to call an ambulance. I ran back outside. The police were coming. I hollered to them, call an ambulance on your police radio. Dr. King has been shot. And the police said, where did the shot come from? So there is a famous picture Ernest Withers took where everybody's pointing, well, 3 or 4 of us pointing to the building across the street. That's the very night of the assassination. This is Abernathy. Martin wanted him to be president if anything should happen to Martin. There I am. That's Ben Hooks, Hosea Williams, Bernard Lee, Andy Young. Andy Young is here. Abernathy said, we will support the Poor People's Campaign and we will support the sanitation workers. Those were the 3 decisions that were made.
Everyone that I get to be with interview or not, I think it has a effect on you. But Reverend Kyles really did it for me. I think after interviewing him, everything became like more real and you know, in school and on TV or whatever. You hear about the civil rights movement, you hear about Martin Luther King and Abernathy and all this, and I don't know, it just, you know it, you know you're supposed to be attached to it in some way. Talking to Reverend Kyles, you have like a direct connection. Well, you're supposed to be attached to it because being Black without the movement, you wouldn't have had any of the opportunities that we have today. That's just how it is. I wouldn't be able to go to my school. I wouldn't be able to vote next year, etc. Like, meeting him made it like an emotional connection. How would you define integration?
Being able to go to school, being able to go sit down and eat at the county, go to hotels and restaurants.
I define integration as a system where a person is chosen for an activity based on qualifications, not on gender, race, or sex.
It didn't just change, so that one day they looked up and said, we're going to, you can come in and sit at this counter and we'll serve you. It happened because the people put up a fight and struggle and demand that it happen. Integration is where you went to school.
The neighborhood that I grew up in, it was African American neighborhood, but I went to school in a white neighborhood.
Why?
Because the schools in my neighborhood were really bad. I took the bus, and I was one of the first kids to get picked up.
So what time did you catch the bus?
Oh, it was still dark. I was on the bus for at least an hour and a half, yeah. Mainly picking up other kids and stuff, but all the Black kids took the bus to school. So, like, the elementary school I went to was in actually pretty racist neighborhood in Chicago, where, like, you know, crosses were burned on lawns, brick through windows. So, you know, I didn't, but, you know, we're sheltered, we're in school, you never really noticed this. So I think when I started noticing, like, discrimination, my mom would go to our, like, PTA meetings or whatever, and so she'd bring me. And I remember one time she kind of stormed out and we walked to the car, and I was like, what was that about? And she said that someone, like, had said the N-word in the meeting, and she just got up and left.
But I remember saying to a group when they talked about integrating, that integration was important. It was important not only for the Black people, but for the white people. The white children need to grow up and to know that we're just like them. We learn the same way they learn, and we do the same things they do. So it's just as important to them as it is to the Blacks to go and to be there with them. The reason was not that we thought we would learn more because we're sitting next to a white person. It's that the white person can learn from us and we can learn from them.
In the school systems I know about, the best Black teachers, best administrators were taken out of those schools and placed in white schools, and that was called integration, but left those schools deficient.
Me and my friends were in the hallway just like playing, being loud. The bus, we call us the bus kids. We were only Black kids in the school. We all took the bus, and so we're being loud. And my teacher came over and was like, look, you guys need to be quiet and be on your best behavior because there's a lot of people that don't want you here, and if you don't act right, like, you know, we're like, okay, let's see other things. Oh, so the bus kids, you know, we're the rowdy bunch, so they got in an argument with one of the white kids, and I think we said something like, the guy's like, oh, you know, I'm gonna send my cousin up here, he's gonna beat you up or whatever, just stuff kids do. The next day, the white kid had a police escort the entire day because he told his mom that the Black kids were gonna kill him. So that was, yeah, so that was pretty crazy.
We lost the community self-help we had during the rigid days of segregation, where we were forced to live in ghettoized area. We turned it into something positive that is a solid community where extended families were very important. For example, during the rigid segregation, the school and the church were outstanding institutions. They were pillars in the community you just knew you could depend on. We don't have that now. And ironically, integration was part of the problem. See, when we integrated, we lost the black leadership in the community, and we don't have the concern for each other we had.
When I first came to St. Louis, blacks had beautiful restaurants that you would dress up and come on Sundays. And once we was able to go to the white restaurant, it fragmented. I think that was a mistake because we killed our business. We killed the black businessmen, and that really had a big effect on the economic base of black families, black-owned business.
Many times segregation hurt us. Integration hurt us also because it took away our unity.
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama, my guy.
Let me give him his accolades. President Barack Obama.
I contributed $100 to Obama's campaign, and I didn't have that kind of money, but I had to do something.
It is my great personal honor to present the 44th President of these United States, Barack Obama.
In January of his inauguration, we rode buses all night from East St. Louis to Washington, D.C. to be at the inauguration. One of the most thrilling experiences one could experience, coming from Jim Crow, segregation, to integration, and be able to see in my time, in your time, the first elected black president of the United States of America. Oh my God.
I was so proud when Barack Obama became the President of the United States. I said, oh my God, I never thought I'd live to see this happen. But almost as soon as it had happened, I think the same thought came to racist white people. Oh my God, we got a nigger in the White House. And suddenly, all the venom, all the vitriolic diatribes that they could think of came forward. And now it's impossible for Barack Obama as president to do anything that is meaningful to the country as a whole.
How would you describe the opposition to President Obama?
Well, I'm not surprised at that. And the Tea Party many of them would say, no, we're not doing this because of his race, and some of them aren't. You know, they're just very ultra-conservatives. They're against anything. They don't want to distribute the good things to everybody. You didn't get good things because you didn't work for them. That's their attitude. You understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. The fact that you couldn't have worked for them earlier is not, they don't consider that. Or that they stopped you from working for them earlier. But then there are people, and there are attitudes in there that are strictly very racial. But you expected that. That's why I didn't really expect him to be elected earlier.
Especially since you're touching on Obama now, some of the issues he faces with Congress or things of that sort.
That's the greatest representation of racism I have ever seen in my life, and it's on a national basis of going around the world. This man is not given the courtesy of being a president, and they are in every way trying to thwart his efforts to make the country better. So therefore, racism is right there in his very midst in the Congress and Senate of the United States.
And this is going from Jim Crow, as I knew it, to Barack Obama. Problems still exist.
I see improvements, but I see racism in the criminal justice system that incarcerates so many young black men for minor offenses, for personal offenses. And I have recently read a book by Michelle Alexander. It's called The New Jim Crow, and it's about the mass incarceration of black men. So while there have been gains, like I said before, there's still so much to be done to make things better.
I do a lot of things online. I do a lot of web design. I do a lot of social networking. And on the internet, it's a totally different world because everyone can be whoever they want to be. And they can be anonymous. They can say whatever they want. I put up a lot of videos online, and I get a lot of negative comments once in a while. And when I first got to YouTube, I think I was in the 7th grade. The videos I was making before, they were just like little special effects videos where I kind of made myself a double when I was cleaning up my room or something like that. So it wasn't anything that was really striking to say, oh my God, you're an N-word, like they kind of did. And I really don't know why they felt the need to go out and talk to a 12-year-old like that, but I didn't do anything to them. I never made any comments that could really provoke them to do that. Personally, I never really experienced a whole lot of racism before that, and going online and seeing a lot of people from the KKK commenting and making video responses to mine and all that. It bothered me for like a couple days, but over time I was like, you know, it's easy for them because when I went to their channels, I was trying to figure out something to say back to them, and ultimately I didn't really reply with much. Because they didn't have any videos for me to really critique. And once I realized that I had no leverage over them, it was because they were anonymous and they didn't really have to deal with the consequences of what they did to me, that I realized I'm bigger than them and I don't have to worry about it. And that's kind of the attitude that I've had toward a lot of the racism that I've experienced online.
I mean, I think on one hand, there are strangers who, you know, like you walk into a store and they're like, you're probably going to steal something, I'm going to follow you around, or whatever. But a friend of mine, we were all in a group talking, and I was saying that in the news, this like really horrible thing happened. Like there was like a terrorist attack in Uganda, and like 75 people died. They were just like, there was some joke made about like whatever country is a fad or in style to talk about, like, you know, oh, last season it was Haiti, this season it's Somalia, you know, something like that. And I was like, okay. And then this person went so far to say like, yeah, it's like, it was Haiti and then now Somalia is the new black. That was what was said. And I was the only person who was not only black in the group, but who was from Africa. So usually it doesn't, I don't know if it hurts immediately, especially when it's that kind of like, just gonna slip it under there. And I feel like usually when I'm discriminated against, it's always in this like really crude form of joking. I feel like the opportunity in our culture to be able to speak up about that stuff has kind of been taken away because people feel like it's been done and said so many times.
Yes, I'm Sion Rhodes. That teenager's family and 2 witnesses urging police to arrest.
Issues like, for instance, Trayvon Martin that affect black people but don't affect white people necessarily. It's just a time to like get your white friends up to date. Trayvon Martin, I guess his murder happened around the same time I was on spring break in Florida with my track and field team. And I guess it was getting a lot of news coverage at that time. So I was sitting around watching it one day when everyone else was tanning. When everyone came back to the room, they were like, turn that off, it's so depressing. I was like, you don't even know what's happening. Then the next day, there's this article I read on my phone, and it was this white guy writing about Trayvon Martin. I was like, oh, perfect, it's a white perspective. So then I gave it to my friend Deej, and she was like, oh my God, this is so sad. This is horrible. I didn't know anything about this. And I was like, yeah. And then she got in tune, and we really clicked and we like had like a serious conversation about it. So, I mean, it's just an opportunity to teach. It's no one's fault, really. It's just you have to be willing to make people aware.
Conditions in America have changed so much for the better. The chip on my shoulder is smaller, but I have been conditioned to be sensitive as a defensive mechanism.
So what kind of things have your parents told you about being a black male?
They just said abide by the rules and the laws, and just don't make yourself a suspect. Don't put yourself in situations that will make you a statistic. And so whatever I do, I'm just saying I'm representing not only myself, but my family and everyone else that is associated with me, with my church, my school. And so I think being involved and being an ambassador at my school, and now with being an Old Spice representative, I think that means a whole nother reason why I should be the best I can be at all times.
There's so many negative connotations with being black, and even like the color black. It's kind of negative unless you empower it in some way. It's funny because I feel that African Americans, black people as a race, it's a race that's so clumped together and doesn't have much individualism. So it's like you don't get a chance to really be an individual, be different. You're like, all black people this, all black people that. You're kind of like marginalized again, like, oh, if you write something from the black perspective, they say. Like a review on like a video game would be like, from the black perspective. It's always labeled, and to be a representative of the black community, I think it's kind of difficult because we're not allowed the same individualism as white people.
Because you always expect it. If you're on the campus, you automatically assume that you are the black authority. Any problems relating to blacks, they felt you could solve it.
I just call people what they call themselves. So if they're like, I'm black, then you say, oh, the black guy said. Or if you're saying, oh, I'm African American, then the African American guy was. So they're just like, well, I'm Jewish. So I'm like, well, but I mean, you're going to write something down. You're going to jump in that white line, of course. But who wouldn't jump in that white line? Besides, she's benefiting from white privilege. End of the story. So I was reading Why All the Black Kids Sit Together. I guess as far as white privilege goes, you don't have to be racist to benefit from white privilege. You just have to be white. Like, even she described it in this way, is like you're on that, like, moving walkway at the airport, and that some people will try like actively like walk across it, and then some people will try to just stand there and go with the flow, but you're still going in the same direction. That's the difference between white privilege and like racism, because only whites can be racist because you can systematically oppress another group of people, but everyone can be prejudiced.
Yes, I have been accused for not being black enough, and I mean, I just think it's really crazy to say that because, you know, many days out of the year I'm dressed in African attire. I speak Swahili, I play African drums, I know so many different African rhythms, and you say I'm not black enough. Now, it kind of just goes into what do you really think black is a little bit, but because I don't speak with Ebonics and I don't, you know, walk around with my pants on the ground, I don't listen to rap music constantly, I think that's when they really say, hey, you're not really black, and my cousin who's white is blacker than you, and it's like, whatever you say. So yes, I have gotten accused of that quite a lot.
And who's accusing you, that black people or white people?
Both.
Oh, yeah.
When I was younger, not just in the area of like my racial identity or whatever, but my identity was based on however people thought of me. I was always like really confused I'm black, but these black people don't think I'm black, so I must not be black. And then wait, these black people do think I'm black, or these white people, they don't see me as black. And then these white people do, and then these Ethiopians see me as Ethiopian, and these see me as totally American. I mean, for me, the healthiest thing for me to do is to create my own identity and be like, I know who I am, I'm gonna tell myself who I am.
Well, when I do see younger kids, I'm involved in a program called EcoAct, and it's a program sponsored through Missouri Botanical Garden. And so basically it allows juniors and seniors to teach fourth grade students about ecology. But when I was teaching there and I see kids with their pants down or cursing or saying particular words like the N-word that I don't like, I try to make sure it's rectified in class. And we kind of had some spills where I kind of went and preached for a second. But I try and spread that, and I know a lot of them look up to me, so I try to make sure everything I say is reflective of what I want them to be and what I think the average African American male should be. I don't know. I don't want to intrude too much in them. I just kind of want to tell them, like, maybe let's not see that because that's a negative image that you don't want to be involved with. And as you get older, it'll be more and more difficult to hold this image. If you want to be successful in life, if you want to make money, it's going to be hard to go there with your pants down on the ground and say, hey, I want to be a lawyer. You have to make changes. You have to adapt to your environments. And that's one thing we're teaching them. It's about ecology and the environment. So if one thing isn't working, you can't keep on doing that thing or you go extinct.
So Mrs. Ward, my generation, looking to your generation, what is your one message that you would like to get out there?
Well, the message I would give is that whatever you want to do, you ought to set goals for it and do it. Now, we don't wait until we're teenagers to set those goals. I worked on several educational programs where children were taught to say then and there what they hope to do when they are grown up and when they're citizens of the United States.
Do you think young people my age or younger can make a difference in the world today?
They already have made a difference. Our president got elected because people, not only are people of color, but of other racial groups together. Let's not forget, it wasn't all black people that put him in office. It was a cross-section of what the United States is, working for the betterment of the people. And it was the young people. Many of them went home and had to change their parents' mind. Those are not of color. Then those of color, we have a lot of our people that need to get on the bandwagon and vote. People have died for the right to vote. Dogs sicked on them, murdered for the right to vote. And now, since it's clear, you won't vote?
As James Baldwin said in one of his books, To Fire Next Time, there's a letter in there to his nephew. He said, don't believe what white people say about you. If black people took seriously what the laws of this nation say about equal rights and tried to live it, they would lose their mind.
Can you explain that?
Because everything is going to be contrary to what they really think or what they want to do. I believe that the reason we have a disproportionate of black men who are homeless is just because of what Baldwin said. It takes a lot of stamina. I mean, mental and physical stamina to take the physical and psychological abuse that you encounter in a segregated and discriminatory environment.
I often think also in this world that we live on, we learn to connect with people. Each of us has a talent. We must use that talent to the best of our ability. We need to connect with many kinds of people. We need to be able to talk and understand other people. And so we don't push a person aside because the person is not like us. We try to connect with that person because we can learn from them the same as another person can learn from us.
There was nobody 40 in that room. Not one person was 40. Martin Luther King was 39. I was 33. Jesse Jackson was 27. John Lewis, the congressman from Georgia. John was 23. He was the youngest person to speak at the March on Washington. I said, now the real question is, what will you do with your life by the time you're 40? That's the real question.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith and the rise. Sing a song full of the all that the presence has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won.